Welcome to the Core Connection Wellness channel. Today I have a really interesting discussion to share with you, especially if you've ever felt out of balance, stressed, worn out, lethargic, or even perhaps a little too driven. Recently, I had the opportunity to speak with Karla Cain, a NAMA board-certified Ayurvedic Health Counselor who serves on the faculty of the Ananda Ayurveda Academy. She's an experienced registered yoga teacher and an ACE-certified behavioral change specialist. Karla counsels her clients towards balance through the ancient science of Ayurveda, which is the sister science of yoga. Karla's company, Sattvic Sage, has two locations, one west of Phoenix and the other one in the Chicago area. I know Karla has counseled me towards better balance and helped me to learn a little bit more about myself. So I hope you enjoy this interview about how you can take control of your health and well-being and find balance. Well, hi, Karla.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. We had a little bit of rain here in Arizona yesterday, so my aloe vera plants are happy.
Oh, wasn't that beautiful? The rain was just beautiful yesterday. I really enjoyed it too. So thank you for coming and visiting with me today, having this chat, because I'm really interested in what you do and kind of who you are and what your practice is. So I would like to jump right in and ask you about Ayurveda. So as an Ayurveda practitioner, can you kind of just give me an idea of what Ayurveda is?
Absolutely. So first I want to say thank you for having me. I feel very honored and blessed and very passionate about sharing this information. And I really appreciate being here right now. So thank you very much. Ayurveda is a very vast Vedic science, and it is a lifetime of study. But to try to put it into a nutshell, I would be hard pressed to describe the entire practice in one sitting. But to
Big question.
summarize it, yeah, it's a big question. To summarize it, it's to say that this practice is 5 to 10,000 years old. It is the oldest medical system on the planet. And it was first documented in about 1700 BC. This classical documentation period lasted all the way up to 700 AD, and it was meticulously documented. And it is a practice based on balance, but also based on each individual being made a different way. And it is the concept of understanding the 5 major elements. So earth, water, fire, air, and ether, the akasha, being the 5th element, is in existence in all things. And so whether it's a distant star, or it's the car you drive, or the coffee cup you're drinking out of, or you and I, every single thing has a very unique design to it. And for humans, of course, it can be as intricate as a fingerprint. And that being said, sometimes an individual will have more characteristics of air and ether. And that is the premise here, the characteristics, the qualities, so to speak. So it is narrowed down into 3 doshas, is what they're called. And the first being Vata dosha. And this would be a person that carries more of the qualities of air and ether. And so if there's someone you know or someone you think of that is very thin, has very low body weight, small muscle tone, very delicate, small features to them, with a very airy personality, very expressive and very creative, more of a right brainer, so to speak.
Right.
This is a Vata predominant person in the way that they're designed. It also means that they are ruled by movement. Maybe they've had 25 addresses in their life, or maybe they like to travel a lot, or they love movement so much they are now working for the airline industry. There's lots of characteristics about a Vata predominant person that are absolutely beautiful. Let's move on to the second, Pitta dosha. This is a dosha ruled by fire and water. And Pitta predominant people are of medium build, medium muscle tone, medium features, but they have a lot of fire in them. And so they have the tendency to digest all things, so to speak. When we think about metabolic rate, not just in the body, but in the mind. So very sharp thinkers, doctors, lawyers, mathematicians, engineers, scientists. The thinkers, who are also very compliant. They tend to have more heat in the body, so they have a large appetite because they burn through things quickly, and they burn through information quickly, and they have a very high desire to learn. At the same time, they have very high standards for themselves and for the world. So all about the heat of the body and mind. The third of the three doshas is called Kapha dosha, who is ruled by cohesion, by binding things together. And so a Kapha person has denser skin, denser muscle tone, denser bone structure, maybe a little bit of a shorter neck, and big round eyes, loving eyes, thick, dense, wavy hair, very moonlit complexion. Not necessarily overweight, but just more on the denser, thicker side. Kapha dosha represents the stability of the body, the lubrication and the hydration and all that is strong and stable. And that stability also carries through in the mind as well. Very loving, very loyal, very laid back, rarely raises their voice. They're the peacemaker. You know, they can be a beautiful support to others with their stability. But each one of these three doshas, these types, so to speak, these qualities, every person has all three of them. But there's usually one or two that is in predominance. And when that is the case, air, ether, vata, fire, water, pitta, and earth, water, kapha, have imbalances that also will arise. And so Ayurveda understands what those imbalances look like, and that each one of these three different types of people will need to take care of themselves in a different way in order to balance out what's occurring for them.
Wow.
That's the short version.
I love that. That was a great description. So is the goal to be balanced between all three? Is that the goal, or is it to, what is the goal? Is there a goal?
Yes, the goal of balance is to recognize what's happening, right? So the Sanskrit word for the way that we're designed is prakriti. It is our inherent nature, something that's not going to change. The color of your hair, the color of your eyes, the length of your bones, all of that was determined at the moment of conception. And that is stable for life. Of course, our hair will turn white and we may lose an inch or two in height and things like that, but those qualities are stable. On the other hand, vikruti is the Sanskrit word for that which changes around us. It means that the way that we take care of ourselves when we're a teenager will not apply when we are elderly, obviously. So that which changes throughout the life cycle, that which changes to our environment, our surroundings, our schedule, our climate that we live in, what temperature are we, residing in throughout the year, our level of movement. So these specific things that change all around us will change how we interact with our environment. That is definitely included in the food that we eat, which is a major focus, because most of the illnesses or ailments that we attain come through how we are building our physical structure. And so it's not that you're going to be equally balanced out, that you're going to be 33, 33, and
Right.
33 between these. It's just that you will start to recognize what is occurring for you. So let's say, for example, because Vata dosha is air and ether, these qualities tend to be dry and cold and very light. And they can cause illnesses in the sensory perception system and in the nervous system. So if you have something occurring, like a tremor or a twitch, this means that that should be balanced out with grounding and warmth and moisture. Pitta dosha, Pitta predominant people have the tendency to suffer from burnout because they have a very hard time resting. They view rest as a weakness and
Wow.
don't know how to slow down. And so all of that heat, the digestion of information, and maybe being attracted to hot, spicy foods and hot yoga practices and the sauna and the sun really increases inflammation in the body. And that looks like blood problems, cardiovascular issues, psoriasis, eczema, skin conditions.
Hmm.
And if that arises, it's important to understand how to cool those down, to balance the fire and water, those qualities of heat. You know, we say pittas are sharp thinkers, but they also have a sharp tongue. So,
What?
you know, it's as if we're, witnessing of self, like I'm feeling really irritable, or,
Mhm.
I'm having hot flashes. It's balancing that out with coolness. And coolness comes through foods that we eat, the lifestyle that we live, the type of herbs that we ingest, but it's a lot of lifestyle practices as well. Now, kapha dosha is earth and water, and those qualities are more on the cool and moist side. So vata is cold and dry, but kapha is cold and oily almost, right?
Mhm.
Wet. And so kapha people, because they're stable, they are the stable, grounded ones, can have the tendency to become too stable. And when that occurs, there's not enough movement in the body. There's lethargy and exhaustion. There's a lot of congestion in the body, allergies, chest congestion,
Hmm.
stiff joints. If you think about kapha ailments being sticky and we feel stuck, so not only stuck in the body, but stuck in digestion, stuck in the mind. Um, Kapha can have the tendency to really be attached because Kapha is ruled by cohesion. So Kapha tendency would be to be attached very securely to uh, ideas, people,
Hmm.
things, maybe even a job that we're not happy in. And that causes further stuckness in the physical body as well, depression, you know. So to balance oneself, it is not to get to 33% in each space. It's to understand this is what I'm experiencing. And then these are the practices that I need to take to balance that out. And it all comes back to qualities: hot versus cold, light versus heavy, clear versus opaque. It is all of the qualities that we use since the dawn of man to determine temperature, viscosity, clarity. There's a lot of physics actually involved as well. And in the end, it goes to show that a vata predominant person who's suffering from certain ailments cannot take care of themselves the same way that a kapha predominant person would. The substances that are used have to be substances that are opposing what's occurring.
Wow. So these constitutions, you might call them, or
Yes.
doshas,
Mm-hmm.
they're not only physical, they are absolutely mental, and even would you even say they're spiritual?
Absolutely. So all three doshas in different percentages exist in the Prakruti side, the way we're designed, in the Vikruti side, the way or whatever we're experiencing as an imbalance. And then in those two states, it exists in the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and energetic planes. And so it's almost as unique as it is as unique as your fingerprint or as your DNA, so to speak.
Wow. Well, I think you've touched on this already, but so how does Ayurveda practice heal? How does it create wellness in our lives?
So there are many, many pieces to Ayurvedic healing. The most predominant used at first is to understand the causative factors. If we want to heal from something, it doesn't mean that we simply ingest something differently or we take an herbal medicine the same way we would just take a pharmaceutical. It's called hetu, nidana. It's to understand what is causing your ailment at the root. Whereas maybe Western medicine, we would say, well, take this medication and it will help the situation.
Symptoms, right?
Symptoms, exactly. So let's take high blood pressure, for example. If someone has high blood pressure, they can easily go on a pharmaceutical that will lower their blood pressure. But what happens with pharmaceuticals is that they act very fast. They're fast acting because they actually drill through the system and go exactly where they need to go. And there's no process that takes place by the human body. We need to digest things and process them. And so a pharmaceutical will just drill right to where it needs to go. And that drilling action is what causes the side effects to other tissues in the body. But with Ayurveda, it is to understand the root cause. So we would say, well, let's look at your experience in life, what you do for a living as an occupation, what type of exercise practice you have, what type of stress coping skills you are using, what are you consuming, what are all these things about you and just you that determine what the causative factor is. That way we can start to see maybe what the root cause of the high blood pressure is, and then start to implement practices that will regulate it. And those practices will be eating for your dosha, number one, because the foods that we eat affect us tremendously in the way that we're rebuilding the body's functioning. If high blood pressure, for example, is a cardiovascular issue, that might be a pitta predominant person, which means that something like jalapenos or something very hot and pungent and spicy is increasing the heat in the body. So it can increase cardiovascular ailment. So there would be a pinpoint focus on exactly what's being ingested, that it should be on the cooling side. Then it would be, lifestyle. What type of pranayama are you doing? What type of yoga are you doing? If you're doing hot yoga, that's further aggravating, vinyasa and doing a very strong practice. Or maybe there's no practice at all because exhaustion is there from pitta burnout. It's so finely intricate. But to answer the question directly, it would be finding the root cause first and then treating it through foods, which is ahara, lifestyle, vihara, medicines, herbal medicines, and cleansing practices. Ashaudhi and panchakarma are the Sanskrit words for these practices. And that would be a really great first step.
Well, boy, I love everything that you're saying about that. Healing, attacking the root rather than the symptom.
Hmm.
Um, Now, do you feel that because, you know, in your practice, the people that you see, because you wouldn't want them to drop all the medications they're on when they come to you,
Correct.
can Ayurveda support Western medicine, or can it be kind of intricately involved while you're still Eastern and Western, right? So can Ayurveda support what's going on with people's medical journey as well?
Absolutely. In fact, we know Western medicine is fantastic for emergency situations,
Right.
right? But even for ongoing maintenance or treatment of any illness, Ayurveda doesn't suggest that you give up your conventional medicine or your conventional treatment in any way, nor will it ever suggest that you stop a course of medicine that has been prescribed to you by your licensed healthcare provider.
Mm-hmm.
It does look to work integratively and to be an assist on the side of anything that you might be experiencing. And even herbal medicines. Herbal medicines are very, very intricate as well because Western herbology and Ayurvedic herbology are two different things. So Ayurvedic herbs are still chosen based on their specific actions when it comes to qualities.
Hmm.
Herbs in general are very, very supportive. You might just find that you don't need the pharmaceutical as much over time. And of course, it's going to depend on the ailment that you're working with. Ayurveda understands that there are 6 stages of disease. And it's usually about the third or fourth stage of a disease that in Western medicine it gets a name,
Hmm.
that the symptoms, the signs and symptoms have become strong enough for you to look into it. But those diseases are actually beginning 4 stages before. We're just not paying attention to the body.
Hmm.
And
So by,
so part
by
of that is also understanding and recognizing symptoms before we think we need to.
well, yeah. So by the time you're diagnosed with an autoimmune disease or something like that, it has been going on for a while in your body.
Yes. Hmm.
Your body's been trying to get your attention.
Exactly. But we've been distracted and we don't think much of it, you know. There's a reason why there's a whole aisle at Walgreens filled with, digestive medicine. A lot of people are suffering from digestive issues and not really taking into account that our digestion is the primary indicator of how our body's functioning.
Hmm. Wow. Now you said a few things about yoga and yoga practice.
Mhm.
Um, Tell me how yoga integrates with Ayurveda.
So yoga and Ayurveda have been practiced together for millennia. In my eyes, there's really no segregation between the two. They both stem from the same philosophies and background understanding. They both understand that there is a tridoshic element to the body and mind. And many yoga postures are actually based, if not all of them, are based on Ayurvedic principle and the way that prana or energy moves through the body. So a dinacharya practice is what it's called in Sanskrit, is like a daily routine that we follow. And within Ayurveda, it's suggested that yoga be part of your daily routine. And it's important to understand that yoga in this term that I'm using is not just a physical posture, that yoga consists of 8 different pieces, and that the postures are just one of them. But they should definitely be practiced together. And in fact, the father of modern yoga, Krishnamacharya, was also an Ayurvedic practitioner and made it aware that not all yoga is for all people. So it depends on what we're feeling in our body and the style of yoga that we practice. And that style would include what type of asana, what type of physical postures we do, what type of breath practice that we do, the pranayam, what type of meditation we do. We say yoga for your dosha, so to speak, is that it is even streamlined. Even the yoga practice is streamlined per person based on you as an individual.
And but I appreciate that so much, even from the perspective of a personal trainer and a corrective exercise specialist, being very individualized in what I would give and prescribe for a client. Yoga as well really can be very individualized for the needs of, it's not just let's do yoga, let's do warrior one, warrior two, right?
Absolutely.
So I love that aspect of it as well. Now, as a practitioner and as someone who teaches and embodies yoga as well, what kind of health challenges are you seeing right now? What are the people that you're speaking to and who are coming to you for consultations? What kind of challenges are you seeing?
I think, it's across the board. And because Ayurveda is such a system of holistic health, it's not just, I think that many people may be discovering Ayurveda now because of the widespread popularity of yoga and because of their desire to seek assistance outside of the norm because they may have exhausted all their resources or they want to integrate the practice together. But if I were to say what are the biggest, most prominent ailments that I see occurring for those who have conversations with me, hypothyroidism seems to be an epidemic right now. There's a big shift in the hormones in the body. Menopause, symptoms. Menopause is a naturally occurring event that women have been experiencing since the dawn of man, and it just seems to be really, really difficult to manage in most recent times. I would say anxiety, anger, depression, a lot of mental help, seeking of finding new perspectives on how to manage our current day's current life and all that we're experiencing. Of course, we have our general ones in our culture, which are very predominant as well: diabetes, high blood pressure, and just, I think that the result of the American diet, right? So there's a lot of digestive troubles happening. And I think when people finally have taken enough Maalox and Rolaids and all those things that are not really helping them out, they go searching online for something more intense. And Ayurveda is generally going to be the first thing that pops up because it is so focused on how we are building this body and mind on what we're consuming. But that being said, largest ailments definitely are mental emotional states and hormone imbalances.
And that makes a lot of sense, especially with the way that we eat and how we drive ourselves and, the social isolation that we might be experiencing to various degrees at this point in time. It can drive a lot of those things in our bodies where we're trying to compartmentalize and kind of stamp them down. They will manifest somewhere else, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's what I meant about processing. You know, Ayurveda views that everything that comes into the body must be processed. That means information, life's experiences as well. It's not just about what we're consuming and processing, but it's our sensory input as well. We are digesting information, we are digesting life's experiences. And if we do not process those thoughts and emotions and process those experiences and release them, so to speak, they do find a way to stay in a certain space in the body and mind and cause illnesses. If I were to describe it in an analogy, you say if you have a bucket and in the top of the bucket is a spout of water filling it up, and in the bottom of the bucket is another spout with the water coming out, and it's coming through at this beautiful speed, this pace, the level of water inside the bucket remains the same because what's coming in and going out is at the even course.
Right.
Well, if that bottom spout gets clogged or damaged in any way, the natural result would be that everything's still coming in to the bucket, but it's not getting processed and let go of. So the bucket will overflow. And the word overflow is used in Ayurveda of the overflow of dosha. That overflow is the illness itself appearing. Something is not being processed properly. And so it's causing toxicity in the body that might be hanging out in the organs, it might be hanging out in the blood, it might be hanging out in the digestive system, it might even be hanging out in the bones. All the tissues of the body can harbor this toxicity, including the mind. So when that overflow happens and emotions are not being processed, illness arise in the mental and emotional state as well.
Well, it's such a testament to how we're not just a physical person. It's not just about what we eat and what we do, but it's about what we take in. It's about our spiritual life as well. There's so many layers, and I think that one of the things that's fascinating and why I connect with Ayurveda is because it has those layers. It speaks to the whole person, like all of our dimensions. We talk about dimensions of wellness. Well, Ayurveda seems to address so much. And the deeper you go, the more that there is there.
Yeah. It is a lifelong study for anyone who touches it. It's definitely a lifelong study. I know that I will be studying this for the rest of my life, and I really, really feel fortunate and blessed by the teachers who have shared with me what they have.
Well, you know, taking into account we're all so different and we have so many levels, is there something that you could give to all of us that we could take away from here? Just a little step along our wellness journey. Is there something that you feel like we could take away?
I think that, you know, bringing Ayurveda into life in baby steps is actually the best way because that's what makes it sustainable and it's not a fad, right? It's not something new. This has been around for thousands of years, but it can become a fad. We can make it a fad if we want to, right?
Right.
So to avoid that from happening, it's best to bring it into life in very little small baby steps. And the first thing I would say, scraping the tongue. Get a tongue scraper, preferably made out of copper, and scrape the tongue after you brush your teeth in the morning. This takes off the ama, the toxicity from the back of the tongue. And it also helps us to digest a little bit better. You know, our taste buds and our saliva are the first part of our digestive process. That would be one. As far as lifestyle goes, maintaining a shoe-free home, not wearing your shoes inside your residence any
Really?
longer. because
Okay.
there's a lot of energy out there in the world, especially on the ground at the gas station. We don't want to bring that into the house.
I don't. No, thank you. Yeah.
We want to think about when we're out and about in the world, we're picking up energy all over, and a lot of it is, of course, on the bottom of our shoes. And so we don't
Mhm.
want to bring that back in the house. It's not just about purity and cleanliness, but it's also energetic. And then, on the topic of energy, and can look at karma, right? So that would be to cease supporting factory farm conditions. And so this would be, even when we go through the drive-through, we have to remember that that establishment is most likely engaged in factory farming and the abuse of animals and things, because that's the products that they're using. And so when we buy those products and we consume those products, not only are we ingesting that karma, but we are supporting that practice as well. So really thinking about, where your dollar goes, and knowing that your karma is, as well, is attached to that dollar. So really kind of finding spaces that are humane and kind to plants and animals on the planet. And also it's good to know that if Joe's in the back throwing your hamburger together and he's upset because he's having a bad day, that, you're getting served that there is a certain energy that comes with the food that we ingest. It's the reason why nobody makes food like your mom, because there is an energy and an essence, a rasa, so to speak, that is in that food as well. It should be made by loving hands. So that being said, that leads into the less cans and boxes, the better. Because when you make your own food fresh, you're automatically going to feel better. There's just, every cell in the body is going to feel better when it has fresh, wholesome support, a foundation for it. There are a million different ways to study, to bring Ayurveda into your life. And I would say the first step is just mindfulness, just taking a look around and thinking about your connection to nature and how you react. If I eat this, I don't feel good, but
Yeah.
not just brushing that off and
Yeah.
taking Rolaids to really look at that. Why don't I feel well when I do that? And why do I keep doing it if I don't feel well?
Yeah, I believe we miss so much because we don't pay attention um, to what's going on in our lives, in our bodies, but even around us, because we kind of move through life um, just try to get to the goal rather than being present along the journey. So I think that's a great message.
I would say probably the most important practice in Ayurveda is to establish what's called the dinacharya, the daily routine. Sometimes in the morning, that's the easiest to do before the day gets away from us, and then we're exhausted by the end and we have no will to adhere. But the practice in the morning, waking up in the morning and stimulating yourself, splashing cold water on the eyes and brushing the teeth and scraping the tongue and doing a beautiful breath practice, just that in itself only takes 10 minutes of time. And it can be really invigorating for you and set the tone of the day, versus waking up and being groggy and headed to the kitchen with the phone in the hand, already on the technology, and making that big pot of coffee. And it can really change, and maybe the news is running in the background. There's two different ways to start our day, and that 10 minutes can really change things over a period of time with profound impact.
Boy, I would agree, and that's a great takeaway. Um, Starting the day in the right way really sets the tone. Um, so I agree with you on that. Well, Karla, there's so much in Ayurveda. There's so much more that we could talk about. I appreciate all that you said today, and kind of all of the nuggets of wisdom that you have given us. And I hope we get to talk again on this subject and on other things as well. I appreciate your time, and I thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I could keep you here all day long.
And I would stay here all day long.
But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
My pleasure.